Hey, happy Monday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the Grand Poobah. Woohoo, yeah. So today is Monday, May 6th, 2019. Had a great weekend. A very, very good weekend, especially with my beloved Chicago Cubs sweeping the St. Louis Cardinals and moving into first place. So that was very cool. Plus Game of Thrones last night. I did some gaming, had a lot of fun. This is episode 297 of the Daily Dope. It is a live stream, so if this is the first time you've joined me, keep in mind this is a very, very casual show. Normally it's tabletop gaming reviews, sometimes it's first looks. A lot of times I'll do some tabletop gaming news of the day as well. So because this is live, chat is available on YouTube. It is not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the stranger commenters at bay, but I do pay attention to the chat. So if you'd like to say hello, or maybe you've got a question, or there's something about Fallout Wasteland Warfare that you would like to learn more about or have me focus on a little bit more during my review tonight, by all means, please do. So, like I said, I will respond. If you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you check out some of the videos on the Gaming Gang channel and you like them, why not subscribe? Don't forget, ring that little bell, because that will not only notify you when there's a new video, it'll also tell you within about 5 minutes of when the stream is gone live. And of course, if you like the website, if you like the channel, by all means, please tell a friend, tell 2 friends. Help spread the word. So, lots cooking. I'm not doing news tonight because I really do think the kind of how to play and review for the Fallout Wasteland Warfare is going to take a bit of time. So, I try to keep the shows around an hour or so. Plus, I got to point out, there wasn't a whole lot of news that was jumping out at me that needed to get out there today. There are a couple of Kickstarters I am going to share some news about tomorrow that look pretty cool. But if you are wondering what's going on the Daily Dope this week, I got something that arrived in the mail today. We're looking at it tomorrow. That's right. The latest adventure supplement for Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition, has arrived. Yeah, so I got this late in the afternoon today. We are going to page through this, take a peek at Ghosts of Saltmarsh on tomorrow's show. Normally Thursdays are RPGs, but I don't mind including more than one role-playing game on the Daily Dope in the week. So, we're going to take a look at Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and of course, I also received the limited edition cover as well. Now, these will be available on May 21st, and I am not aware of any sort of embargo on me sharing this. So, if you are into 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, want to see what's going on with kind of a reimagining, I believe, of the classic Saltmarsh campaign. So I want to say, I think it was 3 adventures, wasn't it? If I remember right, Saltmarsh was, I think it was the first Dungeons & Dragons, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons module that was produced outside the U.S. I believe it was the first one that was produced in the U.K. I think, or at least it was, the writers were from the UK. I know that for a fact. So I'm looking forward to this. Pretty cool. And I guess Wizards of the Coast doesn't hate me for that. less than a thumbs up, right? More of a thumbs down on the Stranger Things D&D starter set, huh? Yeah. So anyway, so that's on tomorrow's show. On Wednesday's show, it's a War Game Wednesday. So I will be unboxing and taking a first look at Time of Crisis. Yes, the Roman Empire in turmoil. So I'm going to take a look at this. We're also going to take a peek at the expansion, The Age of Iron and Rust. So that will be on Wednesday's show. I had mentioned this on Friday. Things from the Flood showed up. Yes. So this is on Thursday, when I usually do my RPGs. So we are going to take a first look and page through Things from the Flood. Then on Friday's show, I will be reviewing Mystic Vale from Alderac Entertainment Group. Yes, finally going to review Mystic Vale. So that's on Friday's show. And then next Monday, we're going to take a first look at like a battle card game that is coming out. I believe this is hitting Kickstarter, to be honest with you. I think it's hitting Kickstarter in a couple of weeks. And it is called Shaolia? I don't know. But it is for 2 to 4 players. Interesting artwork, I'll tell you that much. Interesting artwork. This is not an American game either. This actually came over to me from, I believe, this was shipped out of India. So, interesting. We will be taking a look at that. So, lots and lots of goodies on the horizon. Let me put all this stuff back. Get it off my lap here. So, lots of goodness. Like I said, I am looking forward to checking this out because I remember the Salt Marsh. It's not Ghost of Salt Marsh, is it? The original adventure from, what is it, like 1981, 2-ish? Maybe it is Ghost of Salt Marsh. I won't give any spoilers out, even though, we're talking about a 40-some-year-old module. I will not spoil it. Okay, so also do want to point out, if you are looking for some pretty interesting 5th edition D&D adventures, by all means, go over to thegaminggang.com. Sammy has a new review. It's for Uncaged Volume 1. It's available over at DM's Guild, and it is really, really good. She gave it a 9.7 out of 10. Excuse me. So check that out. It looks very. I have not read it. I have not read it myself, but it's supposed to be very, very impressive. Very, very impressive. So the whole premise of Uncaged is it's kind of like female monsters and like Medusa, right? The Medusa's on the cover. Really cool artwork there too, and kind of a little bit of a twist on classic mythical creatures or classic mythical monsters, which are normally feminine. So, anyway, should be pretty cool. Like I said, Sammy really loved it and gave it a 9.7 out of 10. So check out her review. All right. So anyway, so that's what's coming up this week. I wanted to mention Sammy's review as well. Before I jump into the how to play as well as the review of Fallout Wasteland Warfare, I do want to point out, if you do watch the show regularly, you already know that the Daily Dope and thegaminggang.com are essentially not for profit. So if you do like the show, if you like the website, please consider making a small donation to Lil Bub's Big Fund and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. That's right, Little Bub's. Why did I say little? It's Lil Bub, L-I-L Bub. Anyway, Lil Bub's Big Fund does provide grant monies to organizations around the country that care for special needs pets who are awaiting their forever homes. They are awaiting adoption. So 100% of all funds that are raised by Lil Bub's Big Fund is awarded as grants. It's very, very important to point out. So as I mentioned, I am a huge proponent of animal welfare, although I am not a PETA person by any stretch of the imagination. But if you do make any sort of donation, shoot me an email. My email address is jeffmcaleer@thegaminggang.com. Let me know, and I will definitely give you a shout out on the following show if you would like. I have had people contact me to tell me they didn't want any little pat on the back. Completely understand that. All right, so I know most people are tuning in because they want to check out Fallout Wasteland Warfare, the 2-player starter set. This is from Bethesda Game Studios and Modiphius Entertainment. It's designed by James Sheehan. The game is for 1 or 2 players. That's right, it does have some solitaire rules in this. Pretty interesting. You don't normally see miniatures games with solitaire rules. The game is intended for ages 14 and up, plays in 30 minutes or more, depending on what you're doing. If you're just playing an adventure, if you're just playing a battle, or if you're engaged in a campaign, of course, it is going to take longer than 30 minutes. The game does carry an MSRP of $78.99. This has been out since the end of last year, though I do believe it was relatively difficult for some people to get their hands on. And there are some releases for the system that are sold out that you can't get your hands on. So let's move on over to the other camera. I've got some stuff set up here. I've got a lot of the components of the game sprawled out here on the table. We're going to kind of take a peek at some of this stuff. I am not going to dig really deeply into the gameplay of Fallout Wasteland Warfare because this is actually a relatively crunchy miniature system. I was surprised. I was not expecting that. I was expecting probably something that would be a little more streamlined for people to get right into. Now, just because it is crunchy does not necessarily mean that it's difficult to get into. So we're going to take a look at some of the books. We're going to take a look at some of the minis. I'm going to talk about the dice, the different range markers, so on and so forth. One thing I do want to point out, let me open this up. No, actually, I've got it out. You'll notice I've got everything out on like a little play mat. It is a paper play mat. It's finished though, so it's actually pretty nice. So I do want to point out that the 2-player starter set does come with 2 of these. They are single-sided, but as you can see, I can probably pick up a little bit of glare here if I try. This does have a bit of a treatment on it, so it's not just paper. So these should hold up pretty well. Now, of course, it's a miniatures game. Miniatures games are not necessarily designed to be played on play mats. They're designed to be played on tables with terrain set up and everything else. So, unfortunately, I don't have any. I don't have any miniature terrain. And I wouldn't want to actually set it up for the review and that because then it would lead people to believe, oh, wow, there's some terrain in this. Now, Modiphius Entertainment does have a lot of terrain available separately for purchase and stuff like that. So first off, let's take a look at the first little rule booklet. There's not a whole lot to this, and I'm actually going to toss my reading specs on and grab a quick sip here. Talks about initial know-how for wasteland survival. So what this is it's an introduction to the game. So it's going to talk about how you measure, what is movement. It's got some tutorials in it. Very easy tutorials. Just trying to teach you how. Okay, so navigating the wastes. Players will need the Soul Survivor model, Soul Survivor Day 1 unit card, range rulers, a searchable marker. You're special, and it starts talking about all the attributes. It talks about skill checks. Then talking about shooting. Weird harvest. Okay, so now we get some melee action into the game. And we talk about your new best friends. So you get effect dice, talking about damage and armor. And then an actual kind of adventure here solving the rat problem. So you'll also have talks about the investigation markers. As you can see, they have these little binoculars on them, so that will kind of give you an idea. So it kind of gets you into the rules pretty quickly. So one thing that I found kind of interesting about the game are these range markers here, because they are actually used for movement and combat as well. So usually in most miniatures games, you're going to have a ruler or a tape measure or some sort of measuring device that's not necessarily used just for gaming. With Fallout Wasteland Warfare, we've got 2 sets of these different measuring sticks, basically. So as we can see, we've got orange, yellow, red, green, blue, and then black. And black is a foot. Is basically how this works. And then if you notice, each of these has, up until we get down to orange, each of these actually have a half size. So as an example, for the black, red is actually half the size of the black. Orange is half the size. Yep, here we go. I was going to say, orange is half the size of the yellow. So it's kind of cool how this is kind of set up this way. So rather than sitting there and being like, oh, okay, well, it's going to be 6 inches. 6 inches for, movement, or, 9 centimeter movement. Just went with these measuring sticks here. So I thought that was kind of interesting. A lot of this kind of aims a little bit towards trying to be as language independent as possible, with the basic rules to the actual gameplay. Of course, it's not completely language independent. There's English all over these cards, but there's a lot going on where it's just trying to say, okay, we're gonna show all this different stuff off, and we're gonna use symbols to be able to resolve actions and things like that, and explain what's going on here. So, of course, obviously enough, the game is based on the Fallout franchise. We've got 2 factions that are included in this set. We've got the Super Mutants, and we've got the Survivors. We have 6 miniatures on each side. This guy's, well, I should say really 5, because the Brotherhood of Steel in the powered armor, as well as the Deathclaw, really don't fall into a faction. They're kind of standalone. Although, as far as additional purchases, we do have some miniature sets that do have Brotherhood of Steel minis. So there's, like I said, there is a lot that's been produced from Modiphius Entertainment. Some of it's still available, some of it's out of stock right now. Also included in the game is a miniature for an alien. So he's a little bonus mini. We're going to take a look at the miniatures up close in just a few minutes. So we've got the getting acclimated little rule booklet. Then we have the actual rules of play. And this is fairly detailed. It's 50 plus pages of info. We've got some info about painting your minis, talking about what these different cards all represent, getting started in the Wasteland, talking about the color ranges, the special attributes, skill tests, units and models, game structure, talking about an overview of the round. At its core, the basics of the game are pretty simple to understand. We just start getting into a lot of, I don't want to say optional rules, but a lot of crunchier rules as we continue. Like there's, falling damage and things like that. There are a lot of little tokens that you're going to be utilizing throughout the game as well, for all different things, for damage, for armor. So we've got a combat and damage and armor example here. Talking about charging, close combat, so melee combat. Then we've got searching the wasteland, because a big portion of the game is also all about creating your own settlement, which I thought was very cool. I thought that was pretty sweet. In fact, we've got the campaign handbook right here. I'll show that off in just a moment. So I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. So you've got scavenging, you've got different skills that you're going to use. There's all these different items that you'll find. I've got ready for action with a baseball bat with Pip-Boy. That's pretty funny. Talking about battle cry, which is a melee skill, which is for charging the enemy and beating the hell out of them. It can be pretty powerful. Combat in the game can be extremely deadly, just to point out. And I will show off the dice that are really interesting as well. We've got quick actions. So effectively, on each turn, each player's characters, each mini is going to be able to perform a couple of actions. There are possibilities for you to actually get additional actions as well, known as quick actions. Usually it's because of failure. So we've got preparing. So you actually prepare your character before you activate them. So you have to prepare your faction members before you can actually activate them in combat. I thought that was kind of interesting too. So when you're preparing them, it means, okay, I want to use them, but I don't want to use them just yet. So you can prepare a miniature and then say, okay, well, now it's the other player's turn. Or you can prepare the miniature and take action right there and then. So that's a little bit different. And of course, you can't activate a miniature that has not been prepared. And I'll show that off a little bit. So then we got advanced weapons, we got conditions, and we talk about the heroes, talking about advanced units and models. We've got different heroic actions. See, now remember I said there's a lot of markers in here? These are all the different markers that you're going to use. Not a lot. I mean, there's some that you're going to use quite a lot. But we got an index, we got a quick reference right here, and another quick reference on the back. So, nicely put together. I dug it. Like I said, this is a game that's going to take a bit to get into. This isn't something that it's going to take 5 minutes to explain to somebody and you're going to be playing with all the various different rules. But the rule book's laid out pretty nicely. And of course, as I mentioned before, we've got the getting acclimated little booklet to get you started. Now in the campaign handbook, this is where we start getting into some of the very Fallout-ish aspects of the game. So we're talking about the different factions. These are the factions that are actually in this. So you've got the survivors, the super mutants. Well, the Brotherhood of Steel is only the one character. So we've got the introduction. We've got different events, perks, boosts, quests, solo and co-op mode. So you don't necessarily have to, with two players, you don't have to necessarily battle against each other. You can work cooperatively. There's activating AI models. I actually have some cards that tell you exactly what the AI controlled enemies are going to do. I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was pretty nice. Like I said, usually you do not find, you normally do not find that miniatures games have solitaire play. But we do, and we get responses. So here are some of the responses. So you don't even necessarily have to be playing like the survivors. You could be playing the super mutants and taking on an AI controlled survivor faction. So I thought that was cool too. And then we've got a variety of different missions. So here we got building your settlement, starting your settlement, using it, structures, rule adaptations. Then we get into the scenarios, and we've got a good number of adventures in here. Super duper sweep. Then we got some linked scenarios for a campaign as well. There are additional scenarios that can be downloaded from the Modiphius entertainment website. We've got some tutorial scenarios here. So this first scenario is how the sole survivor gets dog meat. I remember when Fallout made its return, because I played the original 2 Fallouts years and years ago, and I just started cracking up when dog meat showed up. I was like, oh my god, this is great. So anyway, so that's the campaign handbook. So all in all, a lot of good stuff. As I started to say, there's additional scenarios that you can download from the Modiphius website. There's also a battle mode, which is not included in the core box here, the 2-player starter box. But you can download those rules, and it's basically if you want to play like tournaments, right? Everything's got a cap value that so you can build your teams and things like that. Build your forces to play other players tournament-wise. Let me grab a quick sip again. All right. Excuse me. So, let's zoom on in a little bit. We're going to take a look at some of this stuff. Okay, so, let me move some of these minis out of the way. So, first off, let's take a look, excuse me, at, just at the movement, or I should say the range bars here. So, for an example, let's take a look at, okay, so we've got Soul Survivor. So we got the Soul Survivor card. So this is Soul Survivor Day 1. So this is just fresh out of kind of the vault. So we're going to see, up here we've got movement. So we're going to see that a normal movement in the turn for the Soul Survivor Day 1 is yellow. Shows us right there. It's the yellow. So, if we were moving the Soul Survivor, as long as it wasn't any sort of difficult terrain or anything like that, you're going to actually go from one end to the other end. Yes, a little different. Usually, you're actually measuring from here, like to there, to like the front. When you're playing a miniatures game, especially when you're using like a ruler or tape measure or what have you. Here in the Wasteland Warfare, it's just pretty simple. It's just simply bang, bang. So that would be a standard move. Keeping in mind that you'll get 2 actions for each of your characters in a turn, as long as you have prepared them to be activated. We also see here that there's a charge. So the Soul Survivor here can actually charge using red. So gives them a little more movement here. Now, of course, charging and movement, charging, you have to have a line of sight to whatever you're charging at, and it will affect your combat. So, as we can see, we've got the various different bands here. Now, if we take a look at some of these weapons, so let's look for an example at the 10mm pistol. So it's showing us, okay, here's the range. So we've got blue. So that basically means this blue measuring is the range of the 10mm pistol. Which, yes, it does seem kind of odd that this is the complete range for it, seeing that it's a gun, but that is how it's going to work. So you would simply place that at the edge, and as long as any miniature you were firing at is within, then it's in range, so you'd be able to fire. Uh-oh, Pinky has made her arrival down here to make noise. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to use this 20-sided die, but this 20-sided die isn't really a 20-sided die. It's a 10-sided die. It's got some little icons on it as well, which are kind of interesting. So if we get an X, that means that you've automatically failed at whatever you're trying to do. You're going to be rolling against these different attributes that run along the card here. So, as an example, if we're using the 10mm pistol, or if she had a rifle, we'd be using perception. So we would need to roll 5 or less. If it's a melee, it's strength. So it's 4 or less. So we're going to see these little icons here telling us all these different things and how we're going to actually try to resolve different things. So one thing to point out as far as like hit points, you have to look to see where is the heart on the character's card. Look to see where the heart is. So for an example here, usually you're going to see that it's the endurance is going to be the hit points, but depending on the character, here's agility for the Soul Survivor Day 1. Isn't it Nora, if I remember right? Her name's, I think, Nora. Okay, so anyways, that kind of gives you an example of that. So here, the 10mm pistol. Now we start busting out these 12-sided dice, but they're not necessarily regular standard 12-sided dice. So we've got green dice, which tend to have some negative modifiers on it, which are actually good for you. So, for an example, if you rolled a -1, you're subtracting 1 from this die. Unless it's an automatic failure, then you're out of luck. But then we also have the black dice. Black dice is for damage. We've got the yellow dice, which is to kind of break armor, almost, to ignore armor. And we've got blue dice, which provide some special effects, if we're using something that could have a special effect. So as an example here, with the 10mm pistol, it's showing us at the blue range, because further than that it can't fire. But at the blue range, you're going to get 1 black and 1 green die to roll along with the kind of 20-sider. So a situation like this would be perception 5. See the perception 5? It's showing the gun right there. So let's roll these dice. So we get a 6, a -1, and we get a damage point. So her perception is 5. So without this green die, that would be a miss. But this is like an accuracy die. So it gives you a -1, bringing it to 5. So now it's actually a hit. The weapon actually shows that it does 2 points of damage. That's what this basically means. The black die is showing we're going to add another hit. So we've got these little markers here. Like I said, there are loads and loads of markers in this game. Some you'll use more than others. So we've got come on. You know what? I'll just do this. Just grab one of these and one of these. So let's say she was shooting at the alien here. It's just for the heck of it, right? So Nora was firing at the alien. He takes those hits. You're going to actually put these little markers next to the figure showing the damage. And we're assuming he had no armor. Because you'll also see on the card here, it will show, oh, okay, so here's armor points. This is like physical armor. So we've got radiation protection. So anything that shows like this helmet is considered armor, but different types. So, for an example, Nora here has 3 points. But that's what this die would be for. If something was yellow that we were rolling, it would actually be able to ignore armor, depending on what you roll. So these dice are really wild. And you actually have to roll like a save as well for your armor. But I thought these dice were pretty cool. As opposed to just saying, okay, well, it's a normal 20-sided die, and you need to roll, 13 or less to hit, and then you roll like, a 6-sided die or 3-sided die or D4 or whatever for the damage. I thought this was pretty cool how all these little dice kind of come into use. So for an example, if I were rolling here for Nora, it would be a hit with the 3, right? It's actually a 2 because of the -1. And then it would still do 2 points of damage and ignore a point of armor. So pretty cool. I dig how that works. So that's to give you an idea. Let's show you another weapon here. So we got dog bite. So in hand-to-hand combat, melee combat, let's get dog meat here. So the little fist represents melee. That's hand-to-hand combat. So dog meat uses strength. So for an example here, a settler would use charisma. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's agility. What am I looking at? I need the knife. I'm looking for the knife. So it's an 8. So dog meat has a dog bite. So with dog meat, his agility is an 8, so that's pretty damn good. And it would include a yellow, a green, and a blue die. Now, dog meat would have to be in contact with, say, the alien here. And then we would roll our dice, and we would get right there, boom, there's an X. So right away, that X tells us that action failed. So regardless what these other dice are, it won't matter because it's an automatic miss. Now we also get a little X with a gear. Now the gear is actually like a bonus action. We get an extra action, but there's only certain things we can do with that action, and that's in the rule book. Like one is getting like a bonus movement. You might get a bonus attack. If you get the gear, if you roll the gear, you're looking at, you can get the quick action. They're called quick actions. We also have an exclamation point, which, all right, here we go, which you would actually mark on your next to your character with one of these little tokens here, little counters. And you can actually use these to kind of do like bonus. So for an example, if dog meat gets 2 of these, dog meat can add a black die and 2 damage to a successful attack. The only problem is with these little exclamation points is that you got to use them or you lose them. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But as I was talking about earlier, when I was talking about how you have to prepare and then activate your characters. Let's see. Use the power armor from the Brotherhood of Steel. So as an example, if I want to prepare this guy, I'm going to put this little counter down. And then once I actually activate them to do something, be it move a couple of times, move and attack twice, whatever, what have you, then I would flip this over like that. And then I still leave that next to the mini to indicate that, yes, he was activated. He's already done his actions. So, like I said, I thought it was kind of interesting that you sit there and you can decide, yes, I'm going to prepare my unit and then do my actions. Take my actions with unit, or I can just prepare and say, okay, your turn. So you'll have advantage in the game as well, and it's usually it's the player who has the fewest miniatures. Kind of has that initiative. In the case of both players having the same number of minis at the same time, then it's just whoever had it last gives it over to the other player. Right, so we got a bunch of these cool dice, like I said. So we've got all these different characters as well. So on the Super Mutants, we've got the Aviator, the Brute, Super Mutant, the Mutant Hound, Enslaved Tech. You can also use the Enslaved Tech as a survivor, that miniature. And the Death Claw, which the Death Claw is kind of its own thing. That's why it doesn't have the Super Mutant faction written on it. So, same as the Alien. We've got the Alien here. And then we've got our survivors. So we've got Dog Meat. We've got the technician. We've got the settler. So for an example, if you look at Dog Meat's normal move is this red. He can charge at blue. So that's a good distance. And he has a special ability where he can charge without actually having to have a line of sight because of his animal senses, of course. So we've got Settlers. There's Brotherhood of Steel and the Power Armor, Soul Survivor, and Soul Survivor Day 1. You will see if they've got like a little Pip-Boy face, that means you can only have one of that character in your team, in your squad, whatever you want to consider it. If it doesn't, then you can have multiples. So you can have more than one settler. So then we've got a bunch of different items as well. So we've got, say for an example, we have the Brute carries a sledgehammer, which unfortunately, because this is PVC plastic, I need to boil this. I need to boil water and then put that in and straighten that out because it's bent. But he's got a sledgehammer. So, for an example, when he would attack, it's telling me I'm going to roll 2 yellow dice, which is the one that kind of ignores or kind of like breaks armor, along with his hit, and it does 2 points damage. So we've got various different weapons. So they're in the item decks here. Like I said, we've got a bunch of different decks as well. So we've got items, baseball bat, assault rifle, combat shotgun, bolt action pipe rifle, a board, hound bite for mutant hounds, deathclaw swipe, deathclaw crush, laser rifle, fragmentation grenade, missile launcher. Now keep in mind, not all of these weapons are actually represented in this game, but it's still giving you a variety of options here. So various different items. Got Nuka-Cola, Nuka-Cherry, Iguana Bits, Mutant Hound Meat. There is also radiation. So you can take radiation hits too. So your characters can die either from actual physical damage or actually from radiation as well. And the radiation comes more into play when you're doing campaigns as opposed to anything else. So we've got all these different items. I thought that was pretty cool. We've got all these different little cards for the, like, when you're doing the campaign. Danger. Stranger. We got perks. We got perks you can use. Gun nut pistol. Armor. Nerd rage. Creatures. Exploring. Now some of these are only, like for an example, creature is only 3 cards. But I guarantee you get more cards in the various different additional expansion boxes for other figures, other factions as well. Like I said, if you go to Modiphius.net, that's basically their store. You can check out all the various different additional boxes of minis and things like that are available. So as I mentioned, we've got perks, we've got events, we've got boosts, the exploring, we've got leader, we've got heroic. So we've got items as well. We've got like kind of a story going on here. So there's a lot in the box, I'll point out. There is a lot in the box, and as I mentioned before, we also have these solitaire rules as well as an AI for the characters too, for the minis too, so you can play this alone or you can play a co-op with a friend. You don't have to be battling against each other. Pointed out, we've got a lot of different tokens in the game. Some of them you'll use a bunch, some of them you'll not use very much. Oh, we've got those are the damage. This is for activating and preparing. It's a perception and the little bonus. I shouldn't say bonus. It's almost like a critical. Like you build up these little critical points. We got Nuka Cola cabs. We got luck points. We got armor. We've got a variety of different stuff here. We got ammo and stuff. And then we got bigger tokens. Like, for an example here, we can take these little binocular ones and we put them on the board, and you're trying to explore the board to find stuff. So you actually mark these. You can use during a battle. You have objectives that you can mark on the board as well. So there's a lot there as also. So let's take a look at the actual miniatures, because this is where up through this, I'm like, man, this game is really good. There's a lot in here. I'm really digging this. Cameron and I were playing it because Cameron's a huge fan of Fallout. And then we get to the point where we got the miniatures. And I'm going to zoom in on the minis so you can get a better look. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. Card stock on the cards is fine. Like I said before, these little play mats, these little mats that are out here, granted, yeah, you don't have any terrain or anything like that, but they are treated, so they should hold up to some repeated play. It's not just paper. Everything's pretty nice thick. One thing I will point out, some of these little tokens, little counters here, weren't cut that well, so I had to be careful when I was popping some of these out, because they were tearing. The front was tearing off of the counter itself. So a couple of these I had to glue to put back together. Not a huge deal, but I was a little surprised. It was only on a couple of them, about like 3 actually, but I did notice that some of these were not cut as well as they could have been from the punch board. All right, quick sip, then we'll finish up by looking at the miniatures here. Okay, so first of all, the detail for the most part is pretty good for PVC plastic. Now, if everything being released from Modiphius Entertainment for Fallout Wasteland Warfare were all going to be PVC minis, then I'd be like, okay, all right, so the detail's pretty good. It's a little soft in places, especially for an example here. If we look at dog meat's going to be kind of tough to paint up, especially around the mouth area. Now, these are 32 millimeter, but these are pretty thin 32 millimeter. They're not real chunky 32 millimeter. In fact, honestly, when I first saw these, I thought these were 28s. But no, according to the box, these are 32. So the detail is a little bit soft. A little softer than I like to see in a game that is a miniatures game. Now, when it's a board game that they've got miniatures tossed in there, yeah, that's okay. But these will paint up pretty good, but not as good as I would expect. And the reason behind that is there's also resin figures, but you have to purchase those separately, in addition to the core box. That I've got a bit of a beef with. So for example, that's the captured tech. Here we've got the Soul Survivor. So, like I said, I mean, some of them have, the details really nicely done. One thing I do really like is the bases. The bases all have stuff on them. So as opposed to just blank, there's actually, broken wood. Here, this character here is supposed to be standing on a wooden floor with a lantern, a broken lantern laying there. So I like that. I like that aspect of these. I thought that was cool, and I thought that was going the extra mile. Taking a look at, we got the alien here. Once again, like I said, the detail's not terrible. It just, the detail isn't as sharp as it would normally be with metal or resin miniatures, and that's just the way PVC plastic is. Also, as I had mentioned before, we've got some that are bent. So you need to boil water and dip the bent part into it to straighten this out, and it's kind of a pain. So here we see detail's decent. Detail's pretty good. Just, you start getting some soft detail, especially like with musculature and stuff like that. So they're not terrible. Don't get me wrong. They're not terrible. They're good. They could have been better. And the problem that I have is the fact that the more detailed resin figures are available for you to purchase, but they're also an additional $60. They're $59.99 for the 12 figures that you got in PVC plastic. To me, that is kind of a bummer. And the reality is, Modiphius should have taken a stand one way or the other. Because as far as I understand, these are the only PVC plastic minis. All the other miniatures are all resin. And they are resin miniatures that you put together. So you can actually, probably in certain respects, maybe change the posing a little bit. I'm not sure. I have not seen them up close and personal. So, but usually when you're able to assemble miniatures, you can kind of make them a little bit different. Especially how a lot of times you'll get a box set that's like, specific, let's say like Roman legionnaires, right? They're not going to make, usually you don't have 25 different poses in a box of 25 minis. You'll have a few different poses, and then when you're putting them together with their arms, legs, torsos, what have you, their heads, you can kind of change things up a little bit. So really the only knock I have on the game is the fact that they're not the resin miniatures. If you wanted to get the high detail minis, then you've got to go and you need to purchase the additional resin miniatures. Get the same miniatures I don't think you get the alien. I think the alien is a special bonus just available in the 2-player starter set. But to me that's kind of a cheat. If it was going to be that, yes, you had an option where a lot of the stuff coming out was going to be PVC plastic, and like for true collectors, you were looking at them going to have have resin for like real collectors. People who are like, I'm actually not buying this to play the game. I'm buying it for the miniatures. Then I wouldn't really have much of a beef. But the starter set has these plastic minis, and I don't think there's any other plastic minis. Everything else is resin. So it's not a huge criticism. It's not like I'm going to say, oh, well, don't buy this because of it. But I do want to point that out. I do think that Modiphius Entertainment should have just said, hey, all our miniatures are going to be resin, and that's how it's going to be. I understand they probably went with the plastic, because it's going to be, less expensive, and they could kind of trim down the price of the core game, the starter set. Plus, they figure there's probably quite a lot of people going to pick this up who aren't going to paint the miniatures. I get that. I understand that. That's why I'm not giving a huge ding to Fallout Wasteland Warfare because of the plastic miniatures. But it is getting a ding on its score. So, now that you've kind of seen how Fallout Wasteland Warfare works, everything that's pretty much in the box, what do I think and what is my review score? All right, so like I said, I like everything that you get. It's $78.99 as an MSRP, so we'll say $80. So for the $80, you get the bigger rule book. This is like 55 pages, 56 pages of rules here. You get the little introduction to introduce you to the system, and then you get the campaign handbook, which is actually packed with a lot of stuff, and you get references pretty much everywhere. There are a few items in here that I wish that we had like little reference cards, because they're things that you're going to actually take a peek at from time to time. So I wish that we had maybe a couple of reference cards, a couple of sets of reference cards for the 2 players. I mean, we're not talking tons of cards. I'm just saying, maybe 2 cards that kind of explain some of the stuff, especially like the quick actions that can pop up. There are a few of them. It doesn't take long to memorize them, but it's nice to have that like right there and not have to continually be paging through a book, which even though it's bound pretty nice, you're going to beat this book up pretty quickly, flipping back and forth to find specific rule examples and things like that. I was surprised that the game is crunchier than I expected, but that's not a bad thing. I definitely like that. I like the fact that we've got a pretty good Fallout vibe going on with it, especially if you're doing the campaign where you're creating your settlement and you're going to add different areas to the settlement. Now, a lot of that is basically theater of the mind, but I do like that aspect's in it. Would have liked to have seen some more scenarios, but there are some that are on the Modiphius website that you can download. I'm sure there are plenty of people who are creating their own scenarios as well. This is actually a system that's pretty well, miniatures-wise, it's really well supported by Modiphius, although, as I mentioned, it seems like there's quite a few sets that came out that are out of stock. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to have more come out, or just put in a new print run of them, especially save for Gen Con, But I would like to see more supplements for Fallout. So I think that would be really cool. I mean, I like the fact that they've got a lot of miniatures out there that are available, but I would like to see some more supplements as well. As far as the negatives, the only real negatives I've got is the fact that the punch board, some of the little, because you got to realize these things are really small. And there are a lot of these. Here, I'll give you an example. That's the size of these. And there's quite a lot of these on the 2 punch boards for the tokens and counters. And just some of them weren't cut really well, so as I was pushing them through, they were actually tearing apart. So thankfully I was able to glue 3 of those back together, but I had to be really careful, and I kept my hobby knife nearby too in case I needed to kind of nick it out. So that was one little down vote, I guess I'll say. And the other thing is the PVC plastic minis. I would have liked to have seen just go with the resin if you needed to pass the cost on to the consumer, so be it. Because those out there who are going to be painting the miniatures, when they start painting them, especially if they're diehard miniature gamers who do really invest a lot of time and energy into painting their forces, they're going to find that the detail is kind of soft in a lot of ways on these miniatures. And I have been told that the resin miniatures, the details really pop and are really, really fantastic to paint up. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. But all in all, I think the game system itself is cool. Like I said, I enjoyed it. And probably more importantly, my nephew Cameron, who is Mr. Fallout guy, he actually sits there and says, Fallout 76 isn't that bad. It's pretty good. I think he's the only person I know who says it's any good. He enjoyed it as well. So at the end of the day, even dinging it a little bit for the plastic miniatures as well as some of the punchboard tokens, I give Fallout Wasteland Warfare a very, very solid 8.6 out of 10. All right, so that is it for tonight's show. Kind of surprised, kind of quiet in chat. I'm wondering if for some reason the stream didn't pop out, that it was showing that I'm streaming tonight. You never know. I have heard from people in the past that they didn't get a notification that the stream went live. So, I don't know. Then again, maybe some of the folks were like, come on. Fallout Wasteland Warfare has been out for months. I've already seen umpteen reviews. Hey, I just got it. What can I tell you? Anyway, as I was starting to say, on tomorrow's show, I will be taking a first look and paging through Ghosts of Saltmarsh from Wizards of the Coast for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So as I like to point out, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. By now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. I will be back tomorrow, and until then, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.